What's up guys, my name is John Huang and I am back with another music tutorial. So what if I told you mastering doesn't have to be stressful, time consuming, and require a ton of plugins to sound great? As a music artist, I want to spend my focus and energy on making my track sound as great and professional as possible. So in this video, I'm going to show you the easiest and laziest way that I master my own music. This is a simple chain I use when I want my track to sound loud, clean, and release ready without doing too much. And for the old heads, fair warning, this will be the laziest mastering chain you'll ever see. The target audience is for people that just want their music to sound great. Or you can stay if you're curious on what I use. Okay, let's get into the DAW, enough yapping. So the very first thing I do when I start a mix is I do clipping on all my mix buses. So that includes drums, vocals, instruments, all the buses, right? And in this case, I'm actually working with a 2-track mix, so I'll be clipping just the instrumental and the vocals, and then one final clipper before it starts touching a limiter. And if you're newer and you don't know what clipping is, I'll try to explain it in a simple way. So clipping is exactly what it sounds like. It trims the peaks of your transients. So the reason why we want to do this is because when you feed a mix into a limiter, every big transient, like a kick or snare, is going to force the limiter to just clamp down. And when the limiter is clamping down on every single hit, it compresses the entire mix and not just that sound. So by clipping a few decibels of those peaks first, the limiter doesn't have to work as hard and the mix stays cleaner and less overcompressed. And I'm only shaving just a tiny amount of the instrumental and the vocal, just enough so that the limiter doesn't have to work as hard, but not too much where there's audible distortion. Here's my instrumental. I'm using StandardCLIP here, but honestly, any clipper will work. In this particular song, I didn't actually lower the clip level much at all. It's actually set at 0, but I'm mainly setting a threshold so that if any transients spike past this point, the peaks will get shaved off automatically. So let me show you what that looks like visually. So it's like barely kissing the threshold. Now, if I were to pull the clip level down too far, this is what it would actually look like and sound like. As you heard, that's very audible distortion, and that's not the sound that we're going for. However, in a genre like hip hop or trap, you would usually need to lower the clip threshold just a little bit more than what I'm doing here, especially to catch the peaks of hard hitting kicks. So also genre based. Right, moving on to the vocals. Here, I'm actually pulling the clip threshold a lot lower, but for a different reason, and that's because vocals don't usually have sharp transients like drums, so I'm not really shaving peaks here. This is more of a safety net, just in case any unexpected spikes jump out before the limiter. We can take a look here.
Maybe I'm slipping, it all just fades away.
So again, just using it as more of a safety net versus actually trying to intentionally shave peaks off the transients. The third and final clipper is actually on the master bus right before we feed it into any type of limiting. Again, acting more as a safety net than anything, but you'll be able to see that there is a little bit of clipping going on. So as you just saw, just a little bit of clipping so that our limiter isn't clamping down as hard on those kicks and snares. Okay, so the second section we're going to get into is perceived loudness. And honestly, I wish I understood how important this was years ago. When most beginners start mastering, they tend to think that more limiting equals more loudness. And that is true, but to an extent. So you can only push a limiter so far before the mix starts to sound flat, lifeless, and sometimes it still doesn't feel loud. And that's because loudness isn't just about level, it's also about frequency balance. So what I'm doing here is I'm throwing on 2 instances of an EQ. In this case, I'm using a Pultec EQ P1A. Honestly, any EQ would work here, but I prefer the Pultec because the curves are really wide and musical. It's almost hard to make things sound bad with it, to be honest. And this is up for interpretation, but the 3 main areas I'm focusing on to increase perceived loudness is 100 Hz, 4000 Hz, and 10,000 Hz. And you can definitely argue which exact frequencies are best, but I found these 3 to be a really solid sweet spot across most of my mixes. So why those 3 in particular? So 100 Hz gives the track weight and fullness. 4,000 hertz adds presence and clarity, and 10,000 hertz adds air and brightness. And when these three areas are balanced properly, the mix feels louder, even though the LUFs and meters aren't really moving. And the goal here isn't boosting just for the sake of boosting. It's about finding balance. Sorry, I'm burping. It's important to note that as I'm doing this, I'm not staring at the EQ. I'm listening for when the mix starts to feel louder, clearer, and more forward without getting any harshness or fatigueness. Okay, yeah, so let's take a listen to what these EQs are actually doing. So without it,
I'm slipping, it all just fades away, 'cause they just ain't the same.
with the EQ, it feels and sounds noticeably louder. After our mastering chain is complete, we're gonna do an A/B listen again later in the video, and you'll notice even a bigger difference. I'm just gonna put these all back to default. Let's start boosting the 100 hertz.
I'm slipping, it all just fades away, 'cause they just ain't the same.
So what I tend to do, and a lot of mix engineers tend to do, is they like to over exaggerate boosts and then slowly pull it back until it sounds even and balanced. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. So next I'm gonna do 4K.
I'm slipping, it all just fades away, 'cause they just ain't the same.
Okay, next we're gonna do 10K.
I'm slipping, it all just fades away, 'cause they just ain't the same.
So I feel like those settings feel nice to me. Again, use your ears and not your eyes. It's really easy to be misled with your eyes. And I do think there are people out there that boost and attenuate. I feel like at the mastering stage, I'm a little hesitant to do that, but feel free to experiment, you know. One of these days I'll get more into the Pultec because it's one of my favorite plugins. So again, loudness is what the meter says, and perceived loudness is what your brain hears. Let's get into the third and final section of this mastering chain. Yeah, this is probably the part where the old heads are gonna get mad, but it's the God particle. And before anyone jumps to the comments, the reason why I like this plugin isn't because it's a shortcut, but I see it as more as it being really predictable. And what the God particle is doing under the hood is essentially what a full mastering chain would normally do, which is compression, EQ, saturation, stereo control, limiting, all working together in a really controlled way. For mastering your own music, especially when you want speed and consistency, it's huge. So instead of stacking like 5 or 6 plugins and guessing how they all interact, this gives me one main control that gently glues everything together. The clipper we used earlier handles sharp peaks, the EQ helps with perceived loudness, and this is the piece that kind of connects everything together. Think of it less like a limiter and more of like a control center for the master. Okay, let's see what the God particle is doing before and after. So before, let me actually turn off the perceived loudness EQs that we have so you can really get an idea of what this plugin's doing.
Baby, I'm slipping, it all just fades away, 'cause they just ain't.
So as you can tell, it just kind of glues everything together, makes it way louder, more clarity, and it's really getting us to that professional loudness that most commercial mixes have, right? So quick overview of the controls. I'm going to keep things really simple. I'm actually leaving everything at default settings here because for this mix, it already sounded good. You know, since Jaden Joshua does it, I can do it. But he actually does leave the God particle on default settings a lot of the time. But anyways, starting with the amount knob in the middle, this is basically the intensity control. Turning this up applies more compression, saturation, EQ, all at once. And this is the most important knob and where most of the magic happens. This is what it sounds like when I like start off at 0 and slowly push it up.
I'm slipping, it all just fades away, 'cause they just ain't the same. Baby, I'm wishing you were here to stay. Am I the one to blame?
So when you're adjusting the amount knob, it's really important that you rely on your ears and find the sweet spot. If it starts to sound squash or harsh, That's how you know you've gone too far. On the left, you've got the low, mid, and high tone knob controls. I wouldn't use these knobs to fix problems, but use them in very small adjustments if the tone of the mix needs adjusting, but I would be very gentle about these. In this case, I'm also leaving them at default. And over here, you can see how much gain reduction is happening with the limiter, and I'm also leaving the limiter at default. And if you see a lot of gain reduction, that's how you know you pushed it a little too far. And at the bottom, you've got your input and output. I'm not using these to make it louder, just to keep levels consistent, but again, default settings. But yeah, the God particle is really that simple, and I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't checked it out already. So now that we have the God particle set up in this chain, let's go back to our EQs and bypass what it sounds like without the perceived loudness moves.
Baby, I'm slipping. It all just fades away. 'Cause they just ain't the same. Oh.
Again, notice how much louder the mix sounds without having to push the limiter hard. Using this perceived loudness trick will really help you compete with other loud commercial mixes as well. But yeah, that pretty much sums up the video. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments and how you guys feel about this chain. Feel free to suggest any tutorials that you guys want to see me do in the future. I really enjoy making content that helps you guys out. But yeah, thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful or useful, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more music and music production tutorials. Thanks.